on 2024 now that the votes have been cast in the midterms. 2/3 of Americans in exit polls say that they don't think you should run for re-election. What is your message to them, and how does that factor into your final decision about whether or not to run for re-election?
It doesn't.
What's your message to them? To those 2/3 of Americans?
Watch me. And Joan Shengang, I'm going to pronounce it, Shanga Kawawa.
To what extent has Vladimir Putin been weakened by recent events? It's hard to tell, but he's clearly losing the war in Iraq.
What?
Last year, the White House scheduled a Biden family wedding to deflect the press attention from President Biden's milestone 80th birthday. Not entirely successfully, however. American media took the opportunity to note how ancient Biden is.
I can't even say, I guess how old I am, I can't even say the number. It doesn't register with me.
They remarked on the fact that Joe Biden's 1942 birth came before the death of Hitler, the dropping of the atomic bomb, and I had to fact check this one, the use of microwaves. In fact, Barack Obama and Kamala Harris were still children when President Biden won his first Senate race in 1972.
The U.S. Senate next year will be that of Democrat Joseph Biden of Delaware. So young, in fact, that at the time of his election on November 7th, Biden was not yet old enough to serve.
This year, the White House is expected to largely ignore Mr. Biden's birthday altogether and hope the rest of America does so as well. The event will come as President Biden's approval rating has plunged to a historic low of 40%, the lowest of his presidency, with voters spooked by his age and increasingly riled by his handling of the Israel-Hamas war.
Fire now! Save the children of Gaza! Save the children of Gaza! Cease fire now! Where is your pride, America?
I recognize that people feel very passionately, but I ask that we have order in this hearing room and respect our speakers. We will move forward with the hearing and allow the people here and the American people to hear from their witnesses.
3,500 kids dead. Come on, I'm an Army colonel, I'm a former diplomat, I resigned on that war in Iraq that you talked about. That was a terrible thing, and what we're doing right now in supporting Israel's genocide of Gaza is a terrible thing too.
Thank you, Secretary Blinken. If you can continue, please.
Frank Luntz, one of America's best known pollsters and who has known President Biden for years and worked with his administration, believes the president is prepared to ignore the polls. Mr. Luntz believes the White House aides will deploy what is known as the Rose Garden strategy for the 2024 presidential campaign, essentially maximizing the power of the Oval Office to get media coverage rather than traveling the country. Part of this involved the president's team carefully managing his schedule, with most of his public appearances occurring between midday and 4 p.m. According to the Washington Examiner, President Biden has spent around 40% of his days away from the White House, leading the newspaper to brand him as the vacationer in chief. President Biden's aides carefully stagecraft his public appearances. He's often given handheld microphones to hold close to his mouth for speeches, even when standing at a lectern fitted with a mic so as to amplify his voice, which has become noticeably softer with age. President Biden has also been spotted appearing to rely heavily on cue cards. The most noticeable difference between President Biden and his predecessors is how little he is prepared to engage with the media.
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
The president's verbal missteps have been a hallmark of his long political career.
We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
As well as the difficulties of his childhood stutter, he has described himself as a self-proclaimed gaffe machine.
Of Putin's kleptocracy. Yeah.
Biden's gaffes have come to highlight concerns about the president's age, and the White House has imposed strict guardrails on his media interactions. The president has given far fewer interviews as compared to Mr. Trump or Barack Obama, declining traditional prime time appearances. Earlier last year, the White House revealed that the President Biden sleeps with an air mask to treat his sleep apnea affliction after photographers captured the indentations made by the device on President Biden's face. President Biden also has been photographed wearing trainers more often and increasingly uses shorter steps to board the Air Force One after numerous trips while ascending the plane. Eagle-eyed White House reporters noticed the president has been using a staircase that folds into the Air Force One and is closer to the tarmac with roughly 14 steps more often. Despite the White House's best efforts and President Biden's determination, even prominent Democrats have questioned whether the president should cede to a new generation of candidates. Obama's chief strategist, David Axelrod, recently publicly called on Biden to, and I quote, weigh his decisions carefully. The president reportedly reacted by calling Mr. Axelrod a prick. Andrew Yang, who ran for the Democratic nomination in 2020, noted recent polls suggest that Biden is now an underdog against Mr. Trump.
Or find his way off a stage. He can't find his way off a stage. You ever see makes a speech, if you call it that. Okay, thank you. And they're screaming at him. They're saying, no, you got there, you got...